Welcome to the Varsity Voices, where high school sports and the Chicago Catholic League take center stage. We don't just cover the games. We talk about what's really going on in the world of high school sports and everything in between. Occasionally, we like to flip the script and give our completely unplugged opinions. One time it's our Dear Dan episode, where I ask the questions and Dan gives you the real talk, no filters. The next is Joe Knows, where Dan throws the questions my way to hear my take on the hot topics, the issues, and sometimes the stuff nobody wants to say out loud. Two voices, two perspectives, and one thing's for sure, we keep it real, we keep it honest, and we have some fun doing it. So get ready. The Varsity Voices starts right now.
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
Welcome to Joe Knows, a special edition of the Varsity Voices. Tonight, the tables are turned from our Dear Dan episode. The questions are coming my way, and it's time for me to sound off. No prep, no filters, just honest takes, real opinions, and maybe a few hot ones too, whether it's high school sports, NIL, transfers, coaching, or what's right and wrong in today's game. If you're thinking it, we're talking about it. Dan's got the questions. I've got the answers, or at least the opinions. So get ready, because Joe Knows starts right now. Nope, no problem.
Joe
Yeah. So there,
Great.
that's it. Yes. So our inaugural Joe Knows episode, Dan, we did the Dear Dan episode a couple of episodes ago, which turned out to be one of our more popular episodes. I don't know. Did I tell you that, Dan?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, we a lot of people like it. Now nobody's
Million plus?
million plus,
Okay.
yes. And I think we're climbing the charts of the most popular podcasts in the US.
Good.
Yeah,
Good. That's a big chart.
it is a big chart. We're right after Joe Rogan, I
Right.
think, and the Kelsey brothers. I think it's Joe Rogan, the Kelsey brothers, then the Freveletti brothers, the
Okay.
Varsity
All right.
Voices. Yeah,
That seems right. That seems right. You know,
it does.
I did hear a stat, Joe, that about podcasts. I don't know if I shared this on a previous episode or not. Do you know the average number of podcasts that the what do you call it? The average podcaster produces and broadcasts over the course of time, like how many they'll do? The average number for a new podcast.
No, tell me.
What do you think it is?
So, like within a certain period of time, like within a year or within a couple of months, what do you think? Total. I would say, and you're talking new podcasts,
Yes.
right? Under 20
Three.
would be 3. Wow, that's amazing. And you know what number we're on?
What number?
83.
83.
Yes.
Nice.
And we are right at about a year.
Are we?
Yes. I think we did our first one, and it was...
I think our first interview was Coach Racky.
Oh, maybe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was around the end of June of last year.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But look at us, 52 weeks in a year, but we've done 83 episodes.
Yeah, we're busy in the fall.
Yes. So, you know what they say, half the battle is just showing up?
Yeah.
So we show up.
Right. And we're wearing people down.
Right. We are wearing them out and wearing them down. No, I think people enjoy it, Dan. That's why we're still here. People like it.
Hopefully they give it a listen. I loved our last episode. I think I told you I thought the interview with Steve Susi was just outstanding. He was great.
Yes.
You and I were on point.
Of course we were. But I'm calling him the Seuss from now on.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So if we have him on again, I think we're friends now, of course. I think he'll be okay with us calling him the Seuss.
Okay.
His X handle, or whatever you want to call it, is the Seuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
think he does. I think when he is or goes with edgy, I think he's Steve the Susie.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, are you ready? You've stalled long enough.
I'm ready. Do
All
you
right.
do you need the drop in
Yes.
again? All right. Here we go.
Joe knows.
All
All
right.
right. Question number one.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you've got some of these printouts or schedules in front of you. Give me a non-conference game that is not obvious, but you think will be a great game.
That is a really good question because there's going to be a lot of good ones. Do I have to give it just one, or can I give you a couple?
Maybe you can do a little countdown.
All right.
Top three or whatever you. I've got one
Yeah.
too that I could add to the
All
mix.
right, good. So I'm interested in some of the new coaches, the new high profile coaches within the Chicago Catholic League. And I think one of the non-conference games that I think will be interesting to me and that I think will be a barometer as to how this program is going to do throughout the year is St. Viator and Robbie Gold, new head
Okay.
coach. So I think in the second week of the preseason, they're playing Kenwood. And we've got, or we had a little bit of introduction to Kenwood last year as far as some of the teams in the CCL played them. And they're a talented squad. They're always right there in the mix. And it'll be interesting to see how Viator does against a team of that caliber. And I think it'll say a lot about where Viator is in the first year of Robbie Gold's tenure,
I
right?
like it. That's a good one.
All right, good. I've got more. The other one I'm interested in seeing and watching or hearing about and covering is Fenwick plays DePaul Prep week 1 preseason. Again, another game. Now it's 2 CCL teams, but I think it's going to be telling as to where both of those teams are at right at the beginning of the year, and maybe telling as far as how they're going to do throughout the rest of the season. I'm interested to see Fenwick without Nate Marshall, without
Yes.
Jack Paris. I mean,
Yeah.
they've still got Tommy Thies, right? And interested to see DePaul Prep without their quarterback and their running back, although they've got some players coming back too. So that's another one that I like and I'm looking forward to. Another DePaul Prep game, their second preseason game is against St. Ignatius.
Yeah.
And you remember when we interviewed Coach Passarella
Oh yeah.
and we asked him about rivalry?
Yeah.
And he mentioned St. Ignatius, right? And we said,
Yes.
are you ever going to schedule that game? And when we interviewed Matt Miller from St. Ignatius, he was kind of, we might not. Depends what our schedule is. But Coach Passarella really seemed to be into it, and his players were into it as well. And that's another game that I think will be really, really kind of fun and a
Yeah.
barometer as well. See
Yeah. For
where they're
both
at.
teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I that's the one I claim we spoke into existence.
Yes, for
Yes.
sure. I think we
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought of that exactly when you asked this question. So, and then one more. I got
Okay.
one more. So, Providence in week 1 plays Wheaton Academy, which, Wheaton Academy had a great season last year, right?
Yeah.
Providence, always a good program. They didn't make the playoffs last year. Wheaton Academy had a great run. Another preseason game that I think will be a barometer as to where Providence is at as far as in their continued development as a program. Playing probably a really good team in Wheaton Academy, who lost to St. Lawrence last year in the playoffs. But, that's another game I'm looking at that I really like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. The one I will add to that,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably along the same lines as your first one. I would like to see what do I have here? I have St. Pat's at Yorkville.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I think a good barometer game, new coach. I'm anxious. Yorkville has has had some good seasons recently, but I think it's a really good barometer game for them. So that's one I'm anxious to see, and to see how St. Pat's looks. I felt like they were a team, one of those teams on the rise at the end of the year. I felt like they get like everybody back. So I'll be interested to see how they look against coming out to Yorkville.
Yeah, new coach, right?
The whole new coach thing is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
That adds a layer to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new coaches this year
Yeah.
in the CCL. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one too. Yeah.
All right. Good. Okay.
All right. So,
Joe knows.
Joe knows. All right. I'm keeping it within the conference here.
okay.
I want you to tell me who your dark horse team is. Who's going to be the dark horse team to surprise within their division, and or perhaps make a deep run in the playoffs?
That is that's a tough one, right? Because I'm trying to think of dark horse, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to come up with a team that last year maybe made a fairly deep run in the playoffs. So I would go, or I'm going to go with, now this is a team that made the playoffs last year, but I feel like they took a huge step forward, and I'm really interested in seeing how they do this year. Maybe if they take a next step, I'm going to go with Marmion.
Okay.
I think they may be a team that people aren't thinking about. Last year, we saw they had a really good freshman quarterback who
Right.
didn't play all year, but he played a couple games and played well. They lose a couple of key players, but I have a feeling they're going to be sneaky good this year, and
Yeah.
they're going to make a little bit of noise. Now they're the
They're in the red division.
red division, right?
Yeah.
Tough division, but I'm going to go with Marmion as my dark horse
Okay.
for this coming year.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I probably would stay with St. Pat's maybe a little bit. I felt like they were, like I said, a team on the rise. So I'll stay with St. Pat's. I'll stay in that. They're in the purple, which is going to be tough. Bennett won it last year. DePaul won the state championship. They were that dark horse team, at least to a lot of people, right? Even
Yeah,
Susie said they were a bit of a dark horse, but we kind of knew after the interview with Coach Passarella they were going to be a team to be reckoned with. So
we did.
it'll be interesting to see this year. Okay,
It
keeping
will.
it keeping it
Wait.
in the conference.
Joe
Oh, sorry,
knows.
Joe knows.
All right, there we go.
There
Now
we
I'm
go.
ready. Come
Now
on.
you're ready.
Bring
Okay,
it on. Yeah.
what Catholic League field stadium do you want to make sure you see this year?
This year. All right. So I'm going to admit something that I haven't been to a ton of them,
Yeah.
although I've been to a fair amount. And there's a couple of venues or stadiums that I think are fun to watch games at. I mean, last year I went to Montini, and I would classify that as kind of an old school high school environment, which was awesome. They had the flyover, they had fireworks, they had horses out on
Yeah,
the field.
they had
I
it
mean,
all.
it was an amazing experience to
Yes.
watch it. And we also, with our Zuko's Dog of the Week presentations, we got to go out to a couple of stadiums. I liked Naz. I liked St. Rita. I liked Marist. I liked St. Francis. But the one that I want to see and that I want to go to, and I've only seen this, I've never been there, and I've only seen pictures of the stadium and some of the highlights that we watched last year, or some of the games that we watched last year, but it's St. Ignatius. I want
Oh
to go
yeah.
there. I want to see that field. I mean, from the pictures, and maybe you can tell me if you've been there, but
Yeah.
from the pictures, I love the way it looks. You can see the skyline from the
Amazing.
stadium. You've got big buildings in the background, and the stadium's kind of tucked within the campus here, but you can still see all that. The view looks outstanding. I can just imagine what a Friday night game is like at Ignatius.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great call, because that is a beautiful stadium because of the backdrop. And if it's a clear night, the city feels like it's right on top of you. and
Yeah.
it's only a couple miles away, but it's a beautiful stadium. So that's a great call.
Yeah. Would you, is there another one you're thinking of or you would think of?
That I haven't been to, or
Or no, you can tell me when you've been to as well. So for example, I have never been to a game at Mount Carmel. I have no idea what that stadium is like. Have you been there?
yeah. Well, when I was there, gosh, this is gonna we probably should know this. When we played at Mount Carmel, um, in the playoffs in 20, maybe that was 2013. That was we played at a another field, like a city field.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if it. I can't remember the name of the stadium. It's one everyone knows, but it's just escaping me right now where they play. So I think they may have changed that, but that's a really good call. Somewhere I've never been that I'd like to go is Brother Rice,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
haven't been to a game there. There are stadiums I love. I've always loved Notre Dame. I always love playing there. I've always loved Marist. Even I feel like that's a true home field advantage. Kind of hard to get maybe in high school, but that one is one where you feel it on third down if you're the opponent, and you're on offense and it's third and short, and you feel the rise of the students and the fans. It's a great atmosphere. So Marist and Notre Dame have always been really good to play at.
Yeah, I thought about Notre Dame because I love the atmosphere of Notre Dame. Not sure how much I love the stadium itself,
Yeah.
but the atmosphere there is outstanding. One thing I liked about Marist when we went there last year, I think it was Marist, or maybe it was St. Rita. You tell me. But the one that was kind of tucked in, there's trees all around it. The scoreboard is kind of off to the left, and it's like a very intimate
Yeah, that's
environment.
Marist.
That's Marist,
That's
right?
Marist. Yeah.
Yeah,
St. Rita's more open.
more open.
That's more of an open feel to it. You kind of park and then you walk up a little area, and then it's it got the track and everything, and it's just more open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going Ignatius probably hands down.
Yeah,
That's the one I want to go
it's a
to.
great call.
Yeah.
That's a really good call.
All right. Good. All right. So
Joe knows.
Joe, you are an advocate for free transfers. Let them transfer as much as you want. So we're going a little bit more big picture here.
all right.
Tell me how you would try to minimize the creation of super teams, or maybe you don't think that's a problem. Do you think it's a problem if you get transfers and it creates super teams?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I'm not sure if I'm an advocate of free transfers, which to me means you could transfer as many times as you would like over your high school career.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm more an advocate of allowing movement or transfers, but limiting it to some extent. And I go back and forth in my mind as to whether I would want to limit it to one or two transfers, within your high school career. For me, I think I lean towards one,
Okay.
and it would have to be after your um, after your freshman year. Um, you could transfer once, over the course of the next 3 years, right? So, you're not in the right fit when you're a freshman, whatever it might be. Things don't look good for you down the road, or at least you think that way. You know, let them transfer at least once. Um, and I know other states are doing the unlimited transfers, which I think that's where you end up creating those super teams. Now, not to say that if you allow one transfer, that it wouldn't create some super teams as well, because it would. But from my perspective, I that doesn't bother me all that much.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead, let kids transfer at least once. You create some super teams, so be it, in my opinion.
Right.
Or the other thing, like you and I have talked about several times, is that if you start with the transfer rule and let kids transfer at least once, put some guardrails around it, and then you see what that does to the high school football or high school sports environment. If it really creates these super teams or whatever and it gets kind of out of control from that aspect and the competition level is way out of balance, then you adjust. I think that's got to be the approach for high school sports and high school football as well. You've got to allow some kind of movement, and then you've got to see what that does to the sport, and then maybe do some additional adjustments after that. That's kind of the way I feel about it. It's not a one and done thing. It should be something which you continue to tweak and adjust as you go forward based on the results you're getting.
Okay. All right, that's good. That's good. That's a little more aligned with kind of how I feel about it too. I
Yeah.
I I do. I've always thought it's good to make players kind of and families jump through some hoops. Yeah, you better really want to transfer.
Right.
But I think I'm okay in this day and age. I do like that. I'm a freshman. It's not a fit athletically, academically, socially. I transfer. And so that to me makes sense. And I don't know how many would transfer, would know enough after their freshman year to make a super team. You might get some of those junior transfers that kids can. It's just like free agency in the NBA. There's a little collaboration that happens. Hey,
Right.
what are you
Yeah.
thinking? Hey, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So maybe one of the tweaks, at some point is you don't allow kids to transfer uh, after their junior year,
yeah,
right? Um, and we see that happening now.
right.
Kids,
Yes,
like, oh, my senior year is coming up. I'm going to transfer to a school that I know is going to be competing for a state championship and I want to be on it,
right.
So I
Yeah,
mean, but again, I think that's maybe one of the tweaks. Initially you let them transfer whenever, just once.
right. Okay.
Um, so something like that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Joe knows.
All right, a little bit bigger picture here too. Again, so on
Okay.
our last episode with Steve Susi, we discussed his playoff predictions included, by my count, 18 teams from the CCL. How many do you actually think will get in?
I don't agree with that. I don't think 18 are going to get in. And here's the reason why. And I think you're going to be right with me on this is if if the requirement is still going to be 5 wins in order to get into the playoffs, I can't see a scenario where 18 of the teams within the Chicago Catholic League that are playing each other throughout the year um, are all going to get to 5 wins. I think you're going to see something similar to what we saw last year, where some of these teams which are really good um, are going to be just short, and just get to that 4 win level. Uh, I would say, I see it more as like 12 to 14 teams, maybe.
Yeah, I was
Um,
thinking 12 to 15.
yeah, 18 seems like a lot. I would love it for our purposes if
Uh,
18 teams made it in.
it would mean it was an amazing year within the divisions and the intra division games or
Yeah.
inter-division games. Yes,
N-
between divisions. We do this every
and yeah. We will
but
continue to
struggle.
debate that over the
Yes,
years.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. The
But
we haven't figured it out in year one.
but the other thing I'll say here, Dan, is I have a hard time questioning the Seuss,
Right,
right? The guy knows his stuff. When I look at what is, call it a formula or whatever it might be, where he determines, especially right now, where he's determined 18 teams, but he's got some teams from the Chicago Catholic League in that 18 that didn't make it last year.
right. St.
Um,
Viator, I saw St. Ignatius.
I see
I see Providence. I
Providence.
think he had
He's
all of
got
them.
them all getting in. I would have to go back, and I haven't done this, but I would love to look at the schedules of each of those teams and see where those 5 wins come from. You know?
Yeah, it's almost like every team in the Catholic League would have to win their non-conference games, both of them.
Right.
They'd have to win one or two in their division and then in the crossover play as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the teams, I'm sure you've seen this, if you look at the schedules for some of the Chicago Catholic League teams, their non-conference games are against Chicago Catholic League teams.
Right.
I mean, they haven't scheduled, outside of it. They're scheduling some team in the Chicago Catholic League that they don't play in the regular season. So that doesn't do you many favors.
No.
Right?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm thinking more along the lines of 12, 14, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. We're on the same page there. That's for sure.
All right. Good.
All right.
Joe knows.
All right. As Zuko is walking around behind me, here's a Zuko theme question for you.
Okay.
Last year, Zuko's all-dog team group of wide receivers included, and this was nominees as well. This may not have been the final list, but Zach Washington, Dario Milivojevic, Luke Doyle, Quentin Burrell, Trenton Walker, Jake Sestone, and Matt Osterman, all juniors, right?
Okay.
Do we even need to play the season to have a change in this group, or will this group of now seniors dominate and squeeze out anyone else who tries to get in that wide receiver class?
I think, and we've mentioned this in some of our episodes, the wide receiver group within the Chicago Catholic League it's been outstanding. I think this coming year it's going to be unbelievable. I think that's going to be the position within the Chicago Catholic League that people are talking about. And you just mentioned all the names of guys who are pegged to have great seasons, right? Really talented. And I think there's the possibility that there's going to be some other ones not on your list, or the ones you just mentioned, that have the ability to kind of break into that group. And I'll give you a couple names. All right.
All right.
So you've got, and you're not going to disagree with any of these, I don't think. So you've got Walter Jones.
Right.
From St. Rita.
Don't disagree.
Had an outstanding season last year. We could only put so many players on our all-dog team, or Zuko's Dog of the Year, or what did we call it?
Zuko's all-dog team.
Zuko's all-dog team.
Yeah.
We could only put so many. Walter Jones was probably right there on the cusp of putting him on that team, right? If we had enough positions for him or enough slots. I think he's going to have another outstanding year. I think he's got a chance to break into that group, right? So I think as we go through this, it's going to put a little pressure on those guys you mentioned, right? Yeah. They've got to step up and they've got to take that next step, actually, in order to stay on our Zuko's all-dog team, right? So you've got Walter Jones, for one, from St. Rita. I've got Marshawn Thornton.
Right.
From Mount Carmel.
Yeah.
Yes. He's only going to be a sophomore. Unbelievable talent. He's picked up Power 4 offers already. I think in the Lemming report, I think Lemming has him rated the number 3 underclassman prospect in the state of Illinois and the number 1 at the wide receiver position. So, I mean, depending on who Mount Carmel has there throwing the ball, I think he's definitely going to be right there and be able to break into that group if he has a great year. The other one is C.J. Harkins from Montini.
Okay.
And I thought he had a good year last year. I feel like he really came on at the end of the year, made some big plays, but he's another one. And if you look at who's going to be throwing him the ball, I think he's going to have an outstanding season. Another really talented player, and he's going to push to be in that group of guys you just mentioned. And then the last one I'll mention is the wide receiver from Loyola, who's going to be a sophomore, Jordan McKinley. already picked up some Power Four offers.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And if you've watched, and I know you saw that unbelievable clip of him, remember,
Right.
where he
Yes.
just leaps over everybody and grabs it with one hand,
Yep.
brings it down. I remember watching a couple of other clips other than that one of him. And I mean, Loyola did not bring him up last year. They played him at the lower levels, and it was like a man amongst boys. So I'm really interested to see how he does this year, and I think he's probably going to be a big weapon for them. And he's another guy, that I think could easily break into that group. But I am really excited about watching the wide receivers in the Chicago Catholic League this year.
Yeah, it's become the position. I think I said this last year. It used to be the running back position, and high school football is still, in many pockets very running back oriented. And even in the Catholic League, you've got Joliet Catholic, St. Ignatius that are going to have, their best athletes, at the running back position, but they are the wide receivers seem to have taken over. You're finding all different sizes, speeds, shapes, everything under the sun at wide receiver. And it definitely that has trickled down from the NFL to college to now high school, is that it is a passing game. So you need to have some studs at wideout.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're making me excited for the season.
Me too.
This is what
Yeah,
I'm talking
I'm
about.
getting fired up. I
Yeah.
am. Yeah. All right.
Joe
All right.
knows.
Joe knows. All right, Joe. So, like a lot of fans out there, seeding drove you crazy last year. Talked
Right.
about it a lot. We
Yeah.
talked about it a lot on our episodes during the season. Other than naming yourself to the IHSA selection committee,
I am almighty.
the Almighty Oz, what would you do to help with the seeding of the playoffs?
Well, for one, and I'm going to agree with the Seuss on this. Is I think in every class you've got to seed 1 through 32. I think that's step one. So again, I think this should be kind of a process that maybe has to play out over a couple of years, right? And you've got to continue to tweak it, just like I said, the previous topic. But I think that's step one. You got to go 1 through 32 in each class, see how that works. And then if necessary, you've got to tweak it after that. But you can't have the blowout games, that you get in the playoffs in some of the classes right now, where you've
Right, when
got
the number one seed gets blown out.
when the number one seed gets blown out. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I personally, if I were to make a first step on that, it would be 1 through 32, but it would also be, incorporate some type of power ranking. You know, So I think you can do 1 through 32, but I still think you're going to get some blowouts. You know, um, just because of records in some of the conferences or with some of the teams. That you've got teams that are maybe, you know, 8-2 or 8-1 or something like that, and from a power ranking standpoint, there's no way they should be playing some of these other teams. So I think you can do that as a tweak, an initial tweak, an initial step one, but I think doing that, but also doing it with a power ranking associated with it, I think that should be step one. I really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think the Seuss said it best, is that the playoffs weren't designed. They weren't designed to do that, to have a number one seed get blown out in week one.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, we'll see what they do with it. Anyways.
Joe knows.
All right, Joe. So asking you to get in the Wayback Machine here. Okay.
All right, way
All right.
back. How
So
far?
think
How
of
far back?
your freshman year of high school.
Whew, that is
Way,
far
way,
back.
way back.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So think of your freshman year football season.
Okay.
That was when Bennett, where we went, we've talked about it a million times,
Yeah.
was in the West Suburban Catholic Conference. There
Yes.
are several teams that were in that conference that are now in the CCL. So I think it's Bennett, Montini, IC, St. Francis, Marmion. Am I
Right.
missing anyone? I
No,
don't think so.
I think that's it.
Because
Yeah.
you had Driscoll, which no longer exists. You had St. Ed's.
Which is now in the whatever that other conference is. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Private school league, maybe. All right. So, what program that you're aware of has changed the most since you played?
All right. So I think I've told this story before, probably to you multiple times, Dan. But when I was at Bennett, um, and we were in the West Suburban Catholic Conference, that was when Bennett was probably, you know, maybe in its, call it its heyday, right? We had all the kids, ton of kids turning out for football, right? I think as a freshman, we might have had 70 kids who came out for football as freshman football at Bennett. So that was kind of Bennett's heyday as far as the number of kids, the success of the program. Maybe it was at the beginning of the success, but that was where Bennett was at. And I remember freshman year, and we were playing St. Francis, and St. Francis was coming to Bennett to play their game, and they showed up in a not a school bus, right? A smaller like van. And I'll never forget when they pulled up into the kind of main entrance of Bennett at that point. We were already out on the field and we were getting ready for the game. We looked like an army out there. We had
Right.
70 guys out there on the field. They pulled up and we all kind of glanced over because here's St. Francis showing up. And they had about 15 guys get off the van or get out of the van to come up or to play us.
Yeah.
And we were all like, what? We didn't even understand that at that point. We're like, how could you not have 70, 75 kids,
Right.
coming here? But what I realized after that was that, they were a small school just getting started, right? I mean, they were just starting their sports programs. And, they were in the West Suburban Catholic Conference and they had to come play us, right? Um, we won the game, obviously, but now when I look at where St. Francis is at and where the school is at, where the athletic programs are at, where the football program is at, I mean, it is just amazing. Now, it has been several decades, right? But what I give them extreme credit for is they continued to grow and grow and grow that program over time to now where they are a perennial, state title contender, right?
Yeah.
So for me, St. Francis is probably the biggest change in schools or programs from when I first started as a freshman, a long, long time ago.
Yeah, I have heard that story. I love that story. I think you told it maybe to the St. Francis coach McMillan when we were out there. Maybe,
I wonder how he took that. Yeah, I can't
but
remember.
or an
Yeah.
assistant. Maybe it was an assistant coach, but yeah, that's a really good answer. They have changed. They have that. They have super cool field.
Yes.
The facilities look great. So the team is obviously awesome. So that's a good answer.
That's a good answer. If you really think about it, and maybe it rile some of the other coaches up that that used to play in the West Suburban Catholic Conference. But St. Francis over the course of time has caught up and then surpassed,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's their sports programs, whether it's their stadium, and whether it's their performance, on the field. So I give them a lot of kudos for how far they've come, over the course of time. So,
All right, that is a good one.
all
Okay,
right,
so along those same
Joe
lines, so
knows.
you've riled up some of the coaches already. I'm gonna
all right,
push it over the edge.
all right, good.
So you can go back to you got to go 1 year further back. So eighth grade,
Okay,
and you can choose any program to play in, but the time is now, right? So does that make sense? So you're an eighth grader today,
okay,
okay,
all right,
and you can't choose Bennett. All right,
all
so
right,
don't want to make it easy. So the Bennett people can't be mad because I didn't give that option to you.
okay,
But kids are traveling now to go play sports and to go to school. If you could choose today, and again, you can't choose Bennett.
okay.
If you could choose today, what program do you think fits you as far as where you would want to be a player?
And distance doesn't matter,
I'm
right?
going to let you choose that.
Yeah. Can I split this up into two answers?
No.
Yeah,
Yes, of
because
course.
all
Yes.
right, because you know, originally, like when I was going to Bennett, first of all, I think, and you may agree with this, I think one of the best decisions our parents ever made was to send us to Bennett,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yep.
Hands down, I think. But if I were to, I think about when I was in eighth grade, it was probably after I was a freshman, though, at Bennett. And Bennett made the playoffs in football and went to the game. And who Bennett played was Geneseo at that time. And I remember the game was at Geneseo. It might have been first or second round. I can't remember. But the atmosphere at Geneseo, I mean, it was like a smaller town atmosphere, but the place was just, it was packed and it was rocking. And it was great football, between two really good teams, different in a lot of ways, but two really outstanding teams. Um, and I remember thinking at the time that, boy, if I had, if distance was no
That
factor,
that's a rough commute from Downers Grove.
rough commute, Geneseo would be a place that I want to play at. Now,
All
obviously,
right.
they won some state championships as well during that time.
Yeah.
They had
And I think a team on the rise to leave
yes,
the Catholic League here for a second.
right, yeah. So that would be that. The other one is if to current day now, um, the lore and the uh, just history and success of Mount Carmel. Um, if I were to stay within the Chicago Catholic League, I would want to be a part of a program like that. I really would. Not sure how I would do, right?
Right.
Considering the type of player now that Mount Carmel gets, but I would love to give that a shot. Um, and even if I weren't a player that were a starter or something like that, I would, just the atmosphere and being a part of a program with that kind of history and, the types of, winning state championships and, also playing with players that are, going on and going to do great things in college and that kind of thing. I would want to be a part of a program like that if it were today.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Kind of a front runner. if I have to
Yeah.
say. But
Oh,
yes,
I
that's
for sure would be jumping on that bandwagon, front runner
yes.
bandwagon. Yeah.
Right. Right. I get it. Totally get it. I can't disagree.
All right.
And for me, the school that we played that was similar to Geneseo was Morris.
Oh yeah, another good one.
that was our
Good
Geneseo.
one.
Yeah, the
Yes.
great atmosphere. The town shut down, signs in the windows of the stores. It
Yeah.
was a very cool atmosphere. All right,
Joe knows.
back to big picture.
Okay.
Right. Okay. For me, this is maybe reflecting how I feel about it, but I feel like I've shied away from talking too much about transfers. I've always felt like the subject had some sort of taboo attached to it, whether they're transferring in and out. And I don't know why. Again, maybe that's my problem or my issue. But do you think we, as Varsity Voices, should cover transfers in and transfers out of the league as a news story when we hear about it? Now, we don't hear about it like you do in college,
Right.
but you do eventually hear about it now with social media and that. Do you think we should cover it like that and kind of have a segment in episodes that talks about transfers?
I think we should cover it, and I think we should be open about it. And this, the before transfers, the taboo topic was what? It was recruiting.
Recruiting,
The
yes.
Chicago, they're the Catholic League schools. They can recruit. They can
Right.
recruit. And I think you put it best. I think you said this a couple times last year, but you know, the Catholic schools, they're always recruiting. How else are kids going to go to the school? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, they're always recruiting kids. It's not like kids are in their district, so they go to that school. That doesn't happen with a
Right.
Catholic school. Right.
Yeah.
So, for that to have been kind of a taboo topic, I didn't quite understand that. Because I understand that Catholic schools, in order to stay in existence as a school, they need to constantly be recruiting and to upping their profile to make them attractive to kids all over, right? Whether it's for
Yes.
education or athletics, either one.
Yeah. Big
Um,
picture, they've got to have the whole thing to attract students.
yeah. So transfers, I think, is going to be or should be the same way. Now, I understand the kind of taboo nature of it right now because it's still to some extent against the IHSA guidelines or rules, right? So it's something that people perceive as being done under the table or not being enforced. But I think like recruiting, I think it should be something that is out there and is talked about, and shouldn't be kind of swept under the table because we all know what's going on.
Right.
And I would rather be out if I were I would rather be out front on it and talking about it versus trying to do something hush hush. I mean, everybody knows a kid transfers. I mean, one of the things I appreciated about our interview with Coach New last week is he just came out and said it. He said, there was a kid who transferred from one school, went to Lincoln Way, went to
East.
Lincoln Way East, primarily to play with the quarterback and to play on a state contender. I mean, he just said it. And, at the time he said it, I thought, maybe he shouldn't be saying that, but, he didn't think that way. And I thought, that's probably the right way to start talking about this because it's not something that's going to go away,
Right.
So I think the more you talk about it, the more you put it out front and the more you kind of promote or stimulate somebody to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
Yes.
not something that's swept under the table all the time or everybody's talking hush hush about it. Let's figure it out and let's do something about it.
Okay.
All right. You got more?
Oh yeah.
All right. Here
Are you
we
good
go.
with a
Joe
few more?
knows.
We have moved on to the fan segment portion.
Okay.
So I've got some questions from some fans.
All right.
May or may not have to do with football. All right.
Great.
This first one does. All right. So teams have started their summer practice sessions.
Right.
This has limited the need for traditional double sessions, that we are familiar with from high school.
Right.
So these practice sessions can go anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks, I think the time frame is. Double
Okay.
sessions went for 2 weeks. Which
Right.
would you prefer? 5 weeks of practice once a day or double sessions crammed into 2 weeks?
I prefer double sessions crammed into 2 weeks.
Would you really?
Yes. I mean,
I hated doubles.
I hated them too.
I hated them more in college, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I hated them more in college too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like once you're there, once you're at the school and practicing, like, fine, let's get it over with. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I'm here. Let's practice from 8 to 10 or 8 to 10:30. Let's take an hour break and, we'll all eat something and drink something. And then let's go from 12:30 to 2, something like that. And let's get it over with in 2 weeks.
All right.
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
one
Oh,
thing
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would be interested to hear your perspective on what do you think would be more productive from a coaching standpoint? Do you think the 4 to 5 weeks of one practice a day or doubles for 2 weeks?
More productive is probably how the way they do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
remember doing punt team at the end of practice 2 and being like, I couldn't jog, I couldn't run anymore, or feeling like I was saving myself for that second conditioning, knowing
Right.
that was right around the corner. I think it's more productive now. They give them time. There's time to meet. The film is such a big thing now, filming practice and reviewing that. So
Right.
I think it's more productive the way they do it now.
Okay.
I did hate doubles, but I probably would prefer that too. I used to love the just the lifting aspect of summer, lifting and running.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was some great camaraderie built. There's
Yeah.
you didn't have a program where it was regimented, where you had to be out of the weight room and onto the field, or vice versa, and you had to get your workout in an hour. Our workouts, right, wrong, or indifferent, used to be 2.5 hours, and maybe an hour and a half of that was just John or shooting the bull in the
Yeah.
weight room. And I really thought it was a cool way to build rapport within the team.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Because I do think that if you look at what's different between when we played and we were doing doubles like that to now, is I think there's less opportunities for the players to develop that camaraderie, right?
Yeah, everything's regimented, scheduled.
Everything's regimented. You're here for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and boom, you're gone. Everybody's hopping in their cars and driving home. Whereas before you practice for 2 hours, like we got an hour and a half break. Everybody's sitting around, whether in the weight room or just sitting around talking, for, with other teammates. That's something which is missing from what they do today, I think. So
Yeah,
not,
it's where some of my best memories are.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
All right. These might be a little more rapid fire. I know we're coming up on an hour.
Joe knows.
All
Hang
right.
with me. They're on my phone. So,
Okay.
What's the best pasta noodle?
Rigatoni, hands down.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe knows.
Okay. Let's see. What do we have here? What's the best way to pass time in Chicago traffic?
I would say listening to the Varsity Voices podcast.
Yes, I love it.
All right.
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
Joe
gosh, I hope he
knows.
says it. All right. I don't know if I can read this one.
What?
We like to keep it PG-13.
Swear words?
Yes. There's a game out there that people play socially.
Yeah.
It's called Blank, Marry, or Kill. Have you ever heard of
Never
that
heard of
game?
it. No.
Well, you have to choose one to blank, marry, and kill. You've got three choices here. Blank being the most edgy,
All right.
right? Can you figure that out?
Kind of.
All
Yeah.
right. Without me spelling it out
Yeah.
like a health class. Okay.
Yeah.
Parsley, basil, and oregano.
So do I have to pick one that's
That
blank,
is
marry,
yes,
or kill?
yes.
Oregano,
Which one? What are you going to do with that one?
marry.
Okay. Which one are you going to kill?
What was
Parsley or basil?
parsley?
Okay. So
So
basil.
basil, I'm marrying.
Nope. You're married. You said you'd
Oh, I
marry
married
oregano.
oregano.
Yeah.
Yes, for
Basil.
sure.
You're just spending
Spending
quality
some
time
time with some quality time.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We've got more.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, God, this is
Joe
awesome.
knows.
No, I'm not going to read that one. Rank the Frevaletti siblings.
Oh God.
All right.
I'm trying to think who that came from. I could probably guess.
Okay, here we go. We'll end with this one, okay?
All right.
What might be the environmental risks and benefits of releasing a synthetic microbe that converts atmospheric nitrogen into fuel like hydrocarbons?
God. I don't think there's any risks to that. It seems to me like it's all benefits.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So I'm all for it. If you come up with that or somebody that comes up with that, I'm all in on it.
I always think to myself with questions, how do you start? I'd like to develop a synthetic microbe. What's the first thing I do?
What's the
I
first
can't even
step?
think of it. I have to maybe buy a microscope. I don't know.
Buy a microscope, yes. And then you've got to figure out what a microbe is.
Right.
And
Yes, I'd have to know one when I saw it.
yeah, right. Know it if you saw it. I have no
Are
idea.
they labeled?
They might be labeled or
Yeah.
they hold little flags, when
Right.
you look at them under the microscope. Yeah.
Oh boy.
All
Yeah,
right.
we have let's see.
I love our fans. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, here we go. Rank the Frevaletti siblings. There's 6 of us, by the way. You don't have to do that.
Okay,
rank,
good.
rank their spouses from least favorite.
I don't have to do that either. There's no way I am doing that.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. I love our fans.
Yes, me too.
I love the fans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very
right.
good.
That is all I have for you.
All right.
on
Well,
Joe
that
Knows.
was good.
Joe knows.
Joe knows. Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. No. Oh, there it is. I lost it.
Joe knows.
All
There
right.
you go.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That was
Well,
fun.
yeah,
Those are good episodes.
I enjoyed our inaugural episode of Joe Knows, but so stay tuned. That's a wrap for this episode of the Varsity Voices. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, the
Subscribe.
takes, maybe even a few laughs along the way. I think so. If you got a question you want Dan to tackle, and Dear Dan, or a topic you want me to sound off on, make sure you hit us up, drop it in the comments, shoot us a message, reach out on social media. Your questions could be the next ones on the mic or as part of our episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on wherever you're listening from. And as always, we'll catch you next time right here on the Varsity Voices.